Captain Jake Morrison stood at the front window of his ship, looking out at the black space around them. His ship, the HMS Endeavour, was on a normal mission to check new areas of space that humans had never seen before. They were far from Earth, in a place where no human had ever been. "Captain, we have something on the scanner," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her seat at the control panel. Her voice was excited but also worried. "It's big, sir, really big." Morrison turned away from the window and walked over to Amy's station. The screen showed a green dot that was much larger than their own ship. "How big are we talking about?" he asked. "At least 10 times bigger than us, maybe more," Amy replied. She pushed some buttons and the screen showed more details. "It's not moving, sir, just floating there in the dark." Morrison felt his heart beat faster. Finding unknown objects in space was always dangerous. They could be enemy ships, alien traps, or something even worse. "Can you tell what it is?" "I'm trying to get a better look," Amy said. She worked on her controls for a few minutes. "Sir, I think it's a ship. But the metal it's made from is old. Very old. And Captain, the design looks human." Morrison was surprised. "Human? That's impossible. We've never been this far from Earth before." "I know, sir. But the shape and the way it's built, it looks like our ships, just much older and bigger." Morrison thought about what to do. They could turn around and go back to Earth, but that would take months, or they could go closer and take a look. "How close can we get safely?" "I think we can get close enough to see it clearly," Amy said. "But sir, if it's really a human ship, where did it come from? And why is it here?" Morrison made his choice. "Take us closer. But go slow and keep watching for any signs of danger." The Endeavour moved forward through space toward the mysterious object. As they got closer, Morrison could see it through the front window. It was huge, dark, and looked like it had been floating in space for a very long time. The ship was long and narrow, with sharp edges and many weapon ports along its sides. "My God," Morrison whispered. "Look at the size of those guns." Chief Engineer Ben Carter came up to the bridge from the lower levels of the ship. He had been working on the engines when Amy found the object. "Captain, what's going on?" "The whole crew is talking about some kind of ghost ship." "Take a look for yourself," Morrison said, pointing out the window. Ben looked and his mouth opened wide. "That's a warship, Captain, a real warship. Built for fighting, not exploring." "Amy, can you read any writing on the hull?" Morrison asked. Amy worked at her station, making the scanner focus on different parts of the big ship. "I can see some letters, but they're very faded. It looks like it says ... "UES Retribution? UES?" Morrison repeated. "That's not a ship type we use anymore. That's old, maybe hundreds of years old." Ben shook his head. "Captain, I've studied every human ship ever built. This one isn't in any of our history books. The design is human, but it's like nothing I've ever seen." Morrison walked around the bridge, thinking. The ship was clearly human, but it didn't match any records they had. It was huge, covered in weapons, and looked like it had been built for war. But humans had been peaceful for 50 years, ever since they joined the Galactic Council. "Captain," Amy said, "I'm not detecting any life signs on the ship. It appears to be empty." "Could be a trap," Ben warned. "Maybe someone put it here to catch ships like ours." Morrison thought about it. "Or maybe it's exactly what it looks like, an old human ship that got lost." He made his decision. "We're going aboard. Ben, get your tools. Amy, contact Earth and tell them what we found. But keep the message short. We don't want to cause panic." "Sir, is that wise?" Ben asked. "We don't know what's on that ship." "That's exactly why we need to look," Morrison replied. "If it's really a human ship, we need to know where it came from and why it's here." Amy sent the message to Earth, then prepared the smaller ship they would use to travel between the two vessels. Morrison, Ben, and 2 other crew members put on their spacesuits and climbed into the shuttle. The trip to the old warship took only a few minutes. As they got closer, Morrison could see that the ship was even bigger than he thought. The hull was dark metal, scarred and marked from years, floating in space. There were holes for weapons everywhere, and the whole ship looked like it had been built for one purpose: Fighting. There's an airlock on the side, Amy said through the radio. It looks like it should fit our shuttle. They connected to the airlock and Morrison was the first to step onto the old ship. His flashlight cut through the darkness, showing metal, walls and floors covered in dust. The air was cold and thin, but their suits kept them safe. The power is completely dead, Ben said, checking his instruments. This ship has been floating here for a long time. They walked through the corridors of the ship, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Morrison had been on many ships, but this one felt different. Everything was built bigger and stronger than modern ships. The walls were thicker, the doors were heavier, and there were weapon controls everywhere. "Captain, look at this," Ben called from ahead. He was standing in front of a room filled with large guns. These aren't normal ship weapons. These are designed to fight other big ships, maybe even space stations. Morrison looked at the weapons and felt worried. Why would humans build a ship like this? "We've never fought wars in space. Maybe we did," Ben said quietly. "Maybe there are things about human history that we don't know." They continued exploring the ship, finding more and more things that didn't make sense. The ship had medical rooms designed to treat battle wounds, storage areas for weapons and supplies, and living quarters for thousands of people. This wasn't just a warship, it was a warship built for a long, hard fight. In the captain's room, Morrison found a desk with papers still on it. The writing was faded, but he could read some of it. It talked about battles, about enemies, about losing contact with Earth, but none of it matched the history Morrison knew. "Captain, you need to see this," Ben called from another room. He was standing in front of a huge computer. "I think this is the ship's main computer. If we can get it working, we might be able to find out what happened." Morrison nodded. "Can you power it up?" "I think so. The power systems are old, but they look like they might still work. It'll take time, though." "Do it," Morrison said. "I want to know everything about this ship." As Ben worked on the computer, Morrison walked back to the bridge of the old ship. He sat in the captain's chair and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth with its peaceful cities and quiet people. But this ship told a different story. This ship said that humans had once been warriors, fighters who built huge warships to battle enemies in space. The question was, what enemies? And what had happened to them? Morrison didn't know it yet, but finding the retribution would change everything. Not just for him and his crew, but for all of humanity and the entire galaxy. The old ship held secrets that would shake the foundations of everything they thought they knew about human history. In the darkness of space, the retribution waited. It had been waiting for over 300 years, and soon it would wake up again. The great meeting hall of the Galactic Council was filled with noise and chatter. Representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their special seats, each one designed for their particular body type. The hall was huge, with a dome ceiling that showed the stars above. It was meant to remind everyone that they were all part of the same galaxy. Ambassador Lisa Parker stood at the center of the hall, feeling small among all the alien beings around her. She had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 5 years, but she still felt nervous when she had to speak to so many different species at once. Today was especially important because she was about to show them something that could change how they thought about humans. "Honored members of the Council," Lisa began, her voice carrying through the hall with the help of translation machines, "I come before you today to present a discovery that our people have made. We have found an ancient human ship floating in deep space." She pressed a button on her control device, and a large picture appeared in the air above the hall. It showed the UES Retribution, the massive warship that Captain Morrison had found. The ship looked dark and threatening against the stars, its many weapons clearly visible. Counselor Vexthara was the first to speak. She was from the Altarian species, with 4 arms and a face that looked like it was made of green metal. When she laughed, it sounded like metal clicking together. "How interesting," she said, and her voice was full of mockery. "The humans want to show us their old toys." "Other?" Council members began to laugh as well. The sound filled the hall, and Lisa felt her face turn red with embarrassment. She had expected them to be interested, maybe even impressed. Instead, they were making fun of her people. Supreme Commander Colinth stood up from his seat. He was a Gentari, and his body was made of what looked like living crystal. When he moved, light danced through his form, making him look beautiful and dangerous at the same time. "This is exactly what we would expect from pre-contact humans," he said. "Look at this crude design, these primitive weapons. It is a good thing we found your species when we did, or you might have destroyed yourselves with such violent creations." Lisa tried to stay calm, but inside she was getting angry. "Respectfully, Commander, this ship is quite advanced. Our engineers have been studying it, and they say the technology is actually very sophisticated." Counselor Zeranon from the hegemony species made a sound that was like a snake hissing. Her people looked like giant snakes with arms, and they were known for being very smart but also very cruel. "Sophisticated?" she said. "This ship is nothing but metal and violence. It proves what we have always known about humans before we civilized. Them, you were a barbaric species that only knew how to fight and destroy?" The other council members nodded and made sounds of agreement. Lisa looked around the hall and saw the same expression on every alien face. They thought humans were stupid and violent, and this ship only proved their point. "The ship is over 300 years old," Lisa continued, trying to make her voice sound strong. "It comes from a time in human history that we don't have complete records of. We believe it could teach us important things about our past." "Counselor." Vextara clicked her metal face again. "The only thing this ship teaches us is that humans were even more dangerous than we thought. Before we guided your species to civilization, you built weapons of war instead of tools of peace. You should be grateful that we saved you from your own violent nature." Lisa felt a flash of anger. The way they talked about humans made it sound like her people were children who needed alien parents to take care of them. "We are grateful for the Council's friendship," she said carefully, "but we would like to study this ship to learn more about our history." "Your history is not important," said another council member, this one from a species that looked like walking trees. "What matters is your future as part of the council. This ship represents the old, violent humans. We prefer the new, peaceful humans that we have helped to create." Supreme Commander Colinth's crystal body flashed with different colors as he spoke. "I have seen many species join the council over the centuries. They all go through the same process. First, they are primitive and violent. Then we find them and teach them to be civilized. Humans are no different. This ship is proof of what you were before we saved you," Lisa wanted to argue, but she knew she had to be careful. The Galactic Council controlled trade routes, technology, sharing, and protection from hostile forces. Earth needed the Council's support to survive in the galaxy. But listening to them talk about humans like they were animals made her feel sick. "What do you plan to do with this ship?" asked Counselor Zeranan. Her snake-like eyes were fixed on Lisa, and they seemed to glow with a cold light. "We would like to study it," Lisa said. "It could help us understand a part of human history that we have lost. Or it could remind you of the violence you are capable of," Vextara said. "Perhaps it would be better if this ship was destroyed." "The galaxy does not need reminders of humanity's violent past." Lisa felt her heart sink. They were talking about destroying a piece of human history, and they were doing it like it was nothing important. "The ship is a historical artifact," she said. "It deserves to be preserved." "It deserves to be forgotten," said the tree-like council member. "Violence should always be forgotten so that peace can grow." Supreme Commander Colinth stood up fully, his crystal form reaching nearly 3 meters tall. "We will vote on this matter. All in favor of allowing the humans to study their ancient warship for a limited time, then destroying it, raise your appendages." Lisa watched as the council members voted. A few raised their hands, arms, tentacles, or whatever they used to indicate agreement, but most of them sat still, which meant they were voting no. "The vote is recorded," Colinth announced. 44 members vote to have the ship destroyed immediately. Only 3 vote to allow study. Lisa felt like she had been punched in the stomach. "Please," she said, "give us some time to learn from it. Even a few months would be helpful. The council members talked among themselves in their various languages. The sound was like a dozen different kinds of animals all making noise at once. Finally, Cullenth spoke again. "We will allow 6 months for study," he said. "But after that time, the ship will be destroyed. We cannot allow such a dangerous artifact to continue existing. It sends the wrong message to young species about what is acceptable." 6 months, Lisa repeated. It wasn't much time, but it was better than nothing. Counselor Zeranan made her hissing sound again. 6 months to study the mistakes of your ancestors. Use the time wisely, human. Learn from their failures so that you do not repeat them. Lisa bowed to the council, which was the proper way to end a presentation. "Thank you for your consideration," she said, even though she didn't feel thankful at all as she walked out of the great hall. Lisa could hear the council members still talking about humans and their violent past. They spoke about her people like they were talking about dangerous animals that needed to be kept under control. It made her angry, but it also made her curious. What if the council was wrong about human history? What if there was more to the story than they knew? The UES retribution was huge and powerful, but it was also incredibly advanced. Maybe humans hadn't been as primitive as the council claimed. Lisa decided that she would make sure the research team learned everything they could from the ship in the 6 months they had been given. She had a feeling that the old warship held secrets that could change everything the galaxy thought about humanity. She was right, but she had no idea how much everything was about to change. Dr. Ryan Collins had been living on the UES retribution for 3 months, and every day brought new surprises. The ancient warship was much more complex than anyone had expected. What started as a simple historical study had turned into something that challenged everything humans thought they knew about their own past. Ryan walked through the dark corridors of the ship, his flashlight cutting through the shadows. The retribution was huge, with dozens of levels and hundreds of rooms. Some areas were clearly for fighting, with weapon controls and armor storage, but other areas were different. There were medical bays designed to treat serious injuries, workshops for building and repairing equipment, and living quarters for thousands of people. "Ryan, come look at this," called Dr. Kate Sullivan from the next room. Kate was his research partner, and she had been working on understanding the ship's power systems. When Ryan found her, she was standing in front of a massive machine that took up the entire room. "What is it?" Ryan asked, looking at the complex device. It had thick cables running in all directions, and the metal surfaces were covered with controls and displays that he didn't recognize. "It's the power core," Kate said, her voice full of excitement and confusion. "But Ryan, this doesn't make sense. The energy output from this machine should be impossible for humans to build 300 years ago. According to our history, we barely had nuclear power back then." Ryan looked at the readings on Kate's scanner. The numbers were incredible. "Are you sure about this?" "I've checked it 20 times, Kate replied. "This power core could supply energy to an entire star system. It's not just advanced technology, it's technology that we can barely understand even today." Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. The more they learned about the retribution, the more it seemed like humans had been much more advanced in the past than anyone realized. But if that was true, what had happened to all that knowledge? Sergeant Alex Torres appeared in the doorway. He was a Marine who had been assigned to protect the research team while they worked on the ship. "Docs, you need to see what I found in the armory." They followed Alex through the ship's corridors to a room filled with weapons. But these weren't the simple guns and missiles that Ryan had expected. These were devices that looked like they came from science fiction movies. "These energy weapons are designed to fight in space," Alex explained. "But look at this." He pointed to a control panel covered with buttons and switches. "These settings aren't for fighting other ships. They're for fighting something else." "Something big." Ryan studied the controls. There were settings for different types of targets, different kinds of attacks, and different power levels. But some of the target categories didn't make sense. "What's a bioship?" he asked. "I don't." "No," Alex said. "But whatever it is, these weapons were specifically designed to destroy them. Kate looked at her scanner readings again. The power requirements for these weapons are enormous. You'd need the kind of power core we just found to even fire them. Once, Ryan was starting to get worried. The ship was clearly built for war, but not the kind of war that humans had ever fought. This was something bigger, something that required weapons and power sources that were beyond anything in human history. We need to find the ship's computer, Ryan said. If we can access the records, maybe we can understand what this ship was really built for. They spent the next week searching through the ship, looking for the main computer system. Finally, they found it in a room near the bridge. The computer was huge, taking up an entire wall, but it was completely dead. I think I can get it working, Kate said, examining the power connections. The main power is off, but the computer has its own backup systems. If I can connect them properly. Kate worked for hours connecting cables and testing circuits. Finally, she found the right combination, and the computer screens began to glow with a soft blue light. It's working, she said with excitement. The computer is coming online. Ryan sat down at the main control station and began trying to access the ship's records. The computer was old, but it was also very advanced. After a few minutes, he found what he was looking for. Captain's log, he read from the screen. Captain Elena Vasquez, UES Retribution. Ryan activated the audio system, and a woman's voice filled the room. She sounded tired and sad, but also determined. Personal log, Captain Elena Vasquez. The war is finally over. The Devourers have been pushed back to the dark space where they came from. But the cost has been so terrible. Ryan, Kate, and Alex looked at each other. None of them had ever heard of anything called the Devourers. This wasn't in any human history book, the captain's voice continued. We've lost everything. Earth is gone. Mars is gone. The colonies in the outer systems are gone. Billions of people dead, entire worlds consumed. The council species that promised to help us disappeared when the real fighting started. They left us to face the Devourers alone. Ryan felt his stomach drop. The council species? She's talking about the Galactic Council. That's impossible, Kate said. The council found us 50 years ago. They helped us achieve space travel and join galactic civilization, but the captain's voice kept talking. The Devourers are not gone forever. Our deep space sensors show movement in the void beyond the galaxy. They're regrouping, preparing to return. The Retribution is the last of the Guardian-class ships. We are the last line of defense. Ryan's hands were shaking as he operated the computer controls. There's more, he said. Lots more. The next log entry was even more shocking. The council species came to us during the war, Captain Vasquez said. They promised to help us fight. The Devourers. They said they were part of a great alliance that protected the galaxy. But when the Devourers arrived, the council ships retreated. They left us to fight alone. Alex sat down heavily in a chair. Are you telling me that the Galactic Council abandoned humanity during some kind of war? Personal log, day 847 of the war, the captain continued. The Devourers have reached the inner systems. They're not just attacking our ships and colonies. They're eating them, consuming everything, metal, energy, even the people. Nothing is left behind. Ryan found video records and activated them. The screen showed space battles unlike anything he had ever seen. Huge black ships, larger than cities, were attacking human colonies. The black ships seemed to absorb energy weapons, making them stronger. But the human ships were fighting back, with weapons like the ones Alex had found in the armory. Look at how they're fighting, Kate said, watching the video. They're not using energy weapons against those black ships. They're using physical projectiles, kinetic weapons. The Devourers feed on energy, Captain Vasquez's voice explained as if she was answering Kate's question. Energy weapons only. Make them stronger. We had to learn to fight them with physical force, with kinetic weapons that they couldn't absorb. Ryan found the final log entry. Captain Vasquez's voice was barely a whisper. The war is over. The Devourers have retreated to dark space, but they'll be back. I'm putting the Retribution into sleep mode. All the other Guardian ships are gone. destroyed or lost. We're the last one. If humanity survives, the captain continued, if we rebuild, someday they'll need to know the truth. The Devourers will return. When they do, someone will need to know how to fight them. The retribution will wait. She will remember. The log ended, and the room was silent. Ryan, Kate, and Alex stared at the computer screen, trying to understand what they had just heard. This changes everything, Kate said finally. If this is true, then human history is completely different from what we were told. The Galactic Council didn't find us and civilize us, Ryan said. We were already civilized. We had advanced technology, space travel, colonies on multiple worlds. But we lost it all fighting something called the Devourers. Alex stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars, and the Council species were there during the war. They didn't help us, they ran away. Suddenly, the lights in the room began to flicker. The computer screen showed new activity. Systems coming online that had been dead for centuries. What's happening? Kate asked. The ship's speaker system crackled to life. Warning, said a mechanical voice. Deep space sensors detecting familiar energy signatures. Devourer scout ships approaching galaxy perimeter, awakening defensive protocols. Ryan felt his blood turn cold. The Devourers are coming back. Oh. Around them, the UES Retribution was waking up. 300 years of sleep were ending, and the ancient warship was preparing for battle once again. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was the most chaotic session in over 1,000 years. Representatives from all 47 member species crowded into the Great Hall, their voices creating a noise that sounded like a storm. Fear filled the air as reports came in from across the galaxy. Ambassador Lisa Parker sat in the human section, watching the panic spread through the council. Her communication device was buzzing with messages from Earth, all asking the same question: what was happening to the outer colonies? Supreme Commander Collins stood at the center of the hall, his crystal body flashing with nervous energy. Order, he called out, his voice echoing through the chamber. We must have order. The noise slowly died down as the council members took their seats. Lisa could see the fear in their alien faces, even though they looked nothing like humans. Terror was something that every living thing understood. Report, Collins commanded. Admiral Marcus Stone, the commander of Earth's space fleet, stood up. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. The attack started 3 days ago, he said. Unknown vessels emerged from dark space at the edge of the galaxy. They're not like anything we've seen before. A holographic display appeared above the hall, showing a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of the attacks. Lisa counted at least 20 systems that had gone dark. The outer colonies are being destroyed, Admiral Stone continued. Not just attacked, but completely consumed. When our ships arrive at the attack sites, there's nothing left. No debris, no survivors, nothing. Counselor Vextara made her clicking sound, but this time it wasn't mocking. It was frightened. How is this possible? The Council has protected the galaxy for 10,000 years. No hostile force has ever penetrated our defenses. These aren't normal ships, Admiral Stone said. They're biological, like living creatures. They seem to eat everything they touch, metal, energy, even the planets themselves. Lisa felt her heart racing. The description reminded her of something she had read in the reports from the Retribution. Admiral, she said, do we have any visual records of these attackers? Admiral Stone nodded and activated another display. The image showed a massive black shape moving through space. It was hard to tell exactly what it looked like because it seemed to absorb light, but Lisa could see that it was huge and had an organic, flowing appearance. My God, she whispered. They're real, what did you say? Kolinth asked, his attention focused on Lisa. Lisa stood up, her legs feeling weak. The creatures attacking us, they're called Devourers. We found records of them on the ancient human ship. The hall erupted in noise again. Council members shouted questions in dozens of different languages. Lisa could hear anger, confusion, and fear in their voices. Silence, Collins commanded. Ambassador Parker, explain yourself. Lisa took a deep breath. The research team studying? The UES Retribution found the ship's historical records. According to those records, humanity fought a war against these creatures over 300 years ago. The ship's captain called them devourers. Counselor Zaranen made her hissing sound. Impossible. Humans were primitive 300 years ago. You had barely developed space travel. That's what we thought, Lisa said. But the records show something different. According to the ship's logs, humanity was already an advanced civilization with colonies throughout known space. The war against the Devourers destroyed everything. The council members began talking among themselves again, but Lisa could tell they were scared. If the records were true, then everything they thought they knew about human history was wrong. Doctor. Ryan Collins' voice came through the communication system from the Retribution. Ambassador Parker, we've made contact with the ship's artificial intelligence. It's been monitoring the attacks. The Devourers are exactly the same as the ones described in the historical records. Lisa activated her communication device so everyone could hear. Dr. Collins, can you tell the Council what you've learned? The Devourers are not from our galaxy, Ryan's voice said. They come from the dark space between galaxies. They feed on energy and matter, consuming everything they encounter. 300 years ago, they invaded our galaxy and destroyed most of human civilization. Counselor Vexthara S. metal face was flashing with different colors. If this is true, why don't we have any records of these creatures or this war? Because the Council species were there during the war, Lisa said, reading from the reports on her device. According to the ship's logs, the Galactic Council promised to help humanity fight the Devourers. But when the real fighting started, you abandoned us. The hall exploded in angry voices. Council members were shouting at each other, denying the accusations, demanding proof. Lisa had never seen them so upset. This is lies, Collins said, his crystal body now flashing bright red. The Council has always protected the galaxy. We would never abandon a member species. Humanity wasn't a member species then, Lisa replied. We were fighting for our survival, and you left us to die. Admiral Stone stepped forward. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. What matters is what's happening now. Our defense fleets are being destroyed. These Devourers are cutting through our ships like they're made of paper. How many ships have we lost? Ask the tree-like council member. Over 300, Admiral Stone replied. And that's just in the first 3 days? At this rate, they'll reach the core worlds within a week. The hall fell silent. 300 ships lost in 3 days was a disaster beyond anything the Council had ever faced. Their combined fleets had thousands of ships, but if the Devourers were destroying them, that quickly, even the largest military force in the galaxy wouldn't be enough. What do we do? Counselor Zarina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lisa looked at the message on her communication device. The UES Retribution is fully operational. Dr. Collins says the ship was specifically designed to fight the Devourers. It has weapons and defenses that our current technology can't match. One ship? Collins said. You're suggesting that one ancient human ship can defeat an enemy that's destroying our entire fleet. According to the records, the Retribution was part of a fleet of similar ships called the Guardian class, Lisa said. They were humanity's answer to the Devourers. The ship's captain, Elena Vasquez, said they learned how to fight these creatures. Ryan's voice came through the communication system again. The Devourers feed on energy. That's why our normal weapons don't work against them. Energy weapons just make them stronger. But the Retribution uses kinetic weapons, physical projectiles, that can't be absorbed. Kinetic weapons? Admiral Stone asked. We have those, but they're not very effective against modern ships. These aren't modern ships, Lisa said. They're biological creatures that evolved to feed on energy. Physical force is the only thing that can hurt them. The council members looked at each other, and Lisa could see the realization dawning on their faces. Their advanced energy weapons, their powerful shields, their sophisticated technology, none of it would work against an enemy that ate energy. The Retribution is requesting permission to engage the Devourers, Lisa said. Captain, Morrison and his crew are willing to take the ship into battle. One ship against an entire invasion force. Vexthera asked. It's better than doing nothing, Admiral Stone said. Our current weapons are useless. If this ancient ship has a chance of stopping them, we have to try. Kolinth stood silent for a long moment, his crystal body cycling through different colors. Finally he spoke. The Council votes on this matter. All in favor of allowing the human warship to engage the Devourers. This time the vote was different. Every single council member raised their hand, tentacle, or appendage. The fear in the hall was so thick that Lisa could feel it pressing down on her. The vote is unanimous, Kolinth announced. The UES Retribution has permission to engage the enemy. Lisa felt a mix of pride and terror. Humanity's ancient warship was about to face the same enemy that had destroyed human civilization 3 centuries ago. But this time they wouldn't be fighting alone. This time the entire galaxy was counting on them. The Retribution is moving to intercept the Devourer fleet, Ryan's voice reported. Estimated contact in 6 hours. The council hall fell silent as everyone realized what was happening. The fate of the galaxy now rested with a human ship that the council had mocked and tried to destroy just months before. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the stars stream by as the ancient warship moved through space faster than any human vessel had ever traveled before. The ship's engines hummed with power that had been sleeping for 3 centuries, and Morrison could feel the deck vibrating beneath his feet. Captain, we're approaching the Devourer fleet, reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. Her voice was steady, but Morrison could see the fear in her eyes. Long-range sensors show at least 50 ships, each one bigger than a space station. Morrison nodded and looked at the display screen. The Devourer ships were massive black shapes that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved through space like living things, flowing and changing their shape as they traveled. Around them, the wreckage of destroyed council ships floated in the darkness. Chief Carter, how are the weapons systems? Morrison asked. Ben Carter looked up from his controls, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cool air on the bridge. All systems are online, Captain. The kinetic launchers are loaded and ready. The ship's computer has been teaching us how to use them, but I'll be honest, sir, this is unlike anything we've ever trained for. Morrison understood his fear. The weapons on the Retribution were designed to fire physical projectiles at speeds close to the speed of light. Each shot required enormous amounts of energy and could destroy entire cities. But according to the ship's records, that was what it took to hurt the Devourers. Dr. Collins, what can you tell us about our enemy? Morrison asked. Ryan Collins stood at a console near the back of the bridge, reading information from the ships. Computer. The Devourers are not machines or even normal living creatures. They're something else entirely. They consume energy and matter to grow and reproduce. When they attack a planet, they don't just destroy it, they eat it completely. How do we kill something like that? Amy asked. According to the records, you can't kill them in the traditional sense, Ryan replied. But you can damage them enough that they retreat. The kinetic weapons fire projectiles that hit with so much force that even the Devourers can't absorb the impact. Morrison felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Behind them, the entire galaxy was watching and waiting. The Galactic Council, the same organization that had mocked and dismissed humanity, was now depending on them to save everyone. Captain, the ship's artificial intelligence spoke, its voice filling the bridge. This is Admiral Helena Vasquez. Ships A, I contain the memories and knowledge of the original captain. I am here to help you fight the Devourers. Morrison was startled. He had known the ship had an AI, but he hadn't expected it to speak like a real person. Admiral, what? Can you tell us about fighting these creatures? The Devourers are intelligent, but they follow patterns, the AI replied. They group together to attack large targets, then spread out to consume smaller ones. If we can break their formation, we can force them to retreat. How many ships did humanity have in the original war? Morrison asked. At the height of the Conflict. We had 12 Guardian-class ships like the Retribution, the AI answered. But one by one, they were destroyed or lost. The Retribution was the last one standing when the Devourers finally retreated. Morrison felt a chill. 12 ships. Had barely been enough to drive off the Devourers the first time, and now they had only one ship to face an entire invasion fleet. Contact in 30 minutes, Amy reported. The Devourer fleet is changing course to intercept us. Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all scared, but they were also determined. Behind them, in the lower levels of the ship, were Dr. Collins and his research team, Marine Sergeant Torres and his security squad, and dozens of other humans who had volunteered to crew the ancient warship. All hands, this is the captain, Morrison announced over the ship's communication system. We're about to face an enemy that destroyed human civilization 3 centuries ago. But we're not the same humans who fought that war. We're stronger, smarter, and we have something they didn't have, the knowledge of how to win. The bridge crew worked quietly as the Retribution approached the Devourer fleet. The alien ships were even more terrifying up close. Each one was several kilometers long, with a surface that seemed to ripple and move like living skin. They made no sound as they moved through space, but Morrison could feel their presence like a weight pressing down on him. They're scanning. U.S., Amy reported. The Devourers know we're here. Good, Morrison said. Let them come to us. The first Devourer ship turned toward the Retribution, its massive form accelerating with impossible speed. Morrison watched as it grew larger on the display screen, its black surface seeming to reach out toward them. Fire! Morrison commanded. The Retribution's main kinetic cannon fired, launching a projectile the size of a small building at nearly the speed of light. The shot hit the Devourer ship dead center, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the creature's surface began to crack and split, black fluid spraying out into space. Direct hit, Ben Carter reported with excitement. The target is damaged but still moving. More Devourer ships were turning toward them now, their attention focused on the single human vessel that had dared to hurt one of their kind. Morrison counted at least 20 ships moving to attack. Fire at will, Morrison ordered. All weapons, maximum rate of fire. The Retribution's weapon systems came alive. Kinetic launchers along the ship's hull fired continuously, sending a stream of projectiles toward the approaching Devourers. Each hit caused massive damage, tearing holes in the alien ships and sending them spinning away from the battle, but there were too many of them. For every Devourer ship that was damaged, 2 more took its place. The Retribution was fighting bravely, but it was being overwhelmed. Hull breach on deck 7, Amy reported. The Devourers are trying to attach to our ship. Morrison could see on the display screen that several of the alien ships had changed shape, extending tentacle-like appendages that were trying to grab onto the Retribution's hull. If they succeeded, they would begin consuming the ship from the outside. Admiral Vasquez, Morrison called to the AI. We need help. Stand by, Captain, the AI replied. Activating emergency protocols? Suddenly, the Retribution's hull began to glow with electrical energy. The Devourers that were trying to attach to the ship were thrown back by powerful energy fields. But Morrison knew this was only a temporary solution. The ship's energy reserves were limited. Captain, Ryan Collins called from his station, I'm detecting something on the long-range sensors. Ships are approaching from all directions. Morrison looked at the display and felt his heart leap. Human ships were arriving from across the galaxy. Not just military vessels, but civilian ships, cargo haulers, exploration craft, and even small personal spacecraft. Hundreds of ships, all heading toward the battle. This is Admiral Stone aboard the HMS Victory, came a voice over the communication system. All human vessels, form up on the Retribution. We're going to finish what our ancestors started. Morrison smiled for the first time since the battle began. The Galactic Council had abandoned humanity during the First War, but this time, humans were standing together. Every ship that could fly was coming to join the fight. All ships. This is Captain Morrison aboard the UES Retribution, he announced. Follow our lead and target the Devourer command ships. Use kinetic weapons only. Energy weapons will only make them stronger. The human fleet spread out around the Retribution, their weapons firing in coordinated attacks. The Devourers faced with hundreds of ships all using the same tactics that had defeated them before, began to falter. One by one, the alien ships began to retreat toward the edge of the galaxy. The few that remained were quickly destroyed by the combined firepower of the human fleet. The Devourers are retreating, Amy reported. They're heading back to dark space. Morrison watched as the last of the alien ships disappeared into the darkness between the stars. The battle was over, and humanity had won. Admiral Vasquez, Morrison said to the AI, is it really over? For now, the AI replied. The Devourers will return someday, but not for many years. They need time to recover and rebuild. The galaxy is safe. Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. They had done something that seemed impossible. They had taken an ancient warship and used it to save the entire galaxy. But more than that, they had proven that humanity was not the primitive species that the Galactic Council had always claimed they were. The truth was finally known. Humans had been guardians of the galaxy for centuries, and they always would be.